Okay, so I'm turning on the chat function here, and here is the, I just posted the, the webinar at today's meet. If anybody's out there watching and has questions, comments, or anything they want to add, please let us know. So we're going to start the broadcast now, and because we're going on to YouTube, we sort of have an official introduction that we'll do. Maura, it's good to see you again. Kevin, thanks for joining us, and here we go. Greetings, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Don Taylor from Main Street Middle School, and welcome to the second episode of our PLP Pathways Webinar series. This project is sponsored by the Middle Grades Collaborative, which can be found at middlegradescollaborative.org. This is our second year of a grassroots effort to support teachers in their work in PLPs. Our goal is to help teachers through web-based resources and social media, and to see if we can deliver professional development through those methods. Thanks very much for being with us this afternoon. And my co-host is Maura Kelly.
Hi, I'm Maura Kelly. I'm a 7th grade humanities teacher at People's Academy Middle Level, and this is my second year working with Don on PLPs.
Okay, and also before we begin, I'm going to just do a quick screen share, and I'm going to point out for folks where they can follow the PLP Pathways project. So if you're interested in following what we have to offer, you guys can follow us on Twitter at PLP Pathways, also at Google+, and this broadcast will show up on YouTube at the PLP Pathways site. We also have a PLP Pathways blog spot, which is updated on a regular basis with all things PLP and all things PLP implementation. Again, if you have questions, you can always email us at plppathways@gmail.com. All right, so here we are, and first, Kevin is sort of new to the program. I met him at a personalization class at St. Mike's. And Kevin, do you want to just share with us a little bit where you're coming in from and where you are in the PLP implementation process?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I am a 5th through 8th grade generalist teacher on Swift House and Williston Central School. It's actually a team that's been around for about 25 years, and they've been using a PLP process for the whole 25 years. I graduated from St. Mike's a few years back and was placed on this team, and it's actually been an amazing experience to get to see the whole process inside and out. And right now we finished the goal setting, and kids are using their e-portfolios, so we're in the thick of it right now, which is a nice place to be.
So one thing that we are going to talk about sort of on the agenda is setting goals. And can you describe a little bit how you're setting goals, and maybe also the lead up to setting goals, if you have any lessons that you implement or ways of sort of scaffolding up to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So we start with our 5th graders. We have a Hopes and Dreams conference at the beginning of the school year, and we use a template which I shared, and I can pull that up as well. Basically, ahead of time, we send out summer mailing for those families, for our new 5th graders, and they brainstorm what are their strengths and challenges, and we break it down. This year we're using the transferable skills. In the past we've used the Vermont Vital Results. So we broke down the 5 transferable skills and had them discuss where their strengths and challenges were in each of those areas. They'd come in conference with their core teacher, and then from there we start to brainstorm what kind of goals would fit their needs. As I said, we've used the transferable skills in the past for goals, so we actually created a whole brainstorm list of those different skills and gave parents and families this list to look at to start the brainstorming process, and then from there they pick out, yeah, this communication goal, I want to do something with writing, and that'll start the whole thought process, and then we'll break it down from there.
Okay, and Maura, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're working on goals?
Yep, so we started our year looking at students' core values. We partnered with the Flying Rhine organization that I became introduced to years ago through the Skivvies Free Ride Tour, because they're one of the sponsors, and they have this amazing program for schools, the Decisions program, and they've partnered with South Burlington High School. And so I met with John Painter, who is a Rowland Fellow, and we decided to adapt the Flying Ryan Decisions program for middle grade students. And so what my students did is they looked at Ryan Hawk's core values that he had for himself, and my students designed their own core values, really thinking about, you know, in essence what they stood for, and created videos that went along with that they then showed their parents at their student-led conferences. From that, students then wrote their About Me's for their portfolios, and we had them go through and start thinking about those core values, and we had them do some work with the transferable skills, where they were creating icons and posters, like if they were to create an advertisement for the different transferable skills, really working with them to break them down and understand the language, being able to put an image to those words and say what it would look like in action in school. And then from that, we had our students create strength-based goals, thinking about things that they might already be working on. And one of the things that we did this year was having students visualize what it would look like when they accomplished their goal. And that visualization really helped our students to think about how they were going to measure it. If someone was to take a picture of you when you accomplish your goal, what would it look like? And it also helps them to sort of have something to reach for in their mind. And so we had them sort of visualize that. And just last Friday, we had students do the first student-led conference of the year.
Okay. So I have just a couple questions to both of you. I'm kind of taking notes, trying to learn as much as I can. So the one question, I know, Kevin, you said that you base all your goals around sort of the transferable skills. And my question, I guess, is there room for kids to say, hey, I want to set an extracurricular goal? Is there a place for that in the PLP? And then also, how are you figuring out, or how are you tracking if your goal setting is actually working? I know that you know, we set a variety of goals and we track them, but I'm wondering, you know, how I can be more effective in ensuring or getting kids' temperature on whether or not these are working. And I wonder if you two have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're setting these goals, a lot of times these transferable skills, something that comes up often is this whole perseverance and persistence. So as we're having these discussions with our kids, we don't want it to just stay academic. When we tell them, when we're having the conference with them, you know, feel free to think about how are you persevering, you know, on a hard assessment that you're working on or something that you're struggling with in school, or how are you persevering at soccer practice. And we're allowing them, when they're making their e-portfolios, to include all that evidence on their reflection. We also do weekly goal reflection, so after they have their 5 goals, they have them set up as a post page on their e-portfolios. So they copy and paste their 5 goals on that page, and every week they have to go on and they have to write a little blurb about what kind of progress they're making on those goals, and what, you know, if they hit any speed bumps, what they were, and what kind of things they needed to keep making progress. From there, we have them, you know, link in their evidence. So by the end, we do have a parent-teacher-student portfolio conference, which is student-led. They take us through their whole portfolio and they show us, you know, this is all the evidence of me, you know, of gaining progress toward these goals, and they show us piece by piece what it is, and then we just kind of open the discussion from there and see if we have to make changes.
And have you, I mean, I just wonder, have you had to make changes at all, or are you talking about changes to the individual goals?
Yeah, we definitely make changes to the individual goals, and we've revamped our process over the past couple of years with the introduction of e-portfolios. We used to do these with binders.
Right.
Back.
And so, just let me get this straight. So, what you do is, do you have a page on your site or on your portfolio, and that's where you're collecting your evidence?
Correct.
Okay, got it. And Maura, how are you guys collecting your evidence?
Before I answer that, could you put the Today's Meet link as an answer to Monica or Susan's question?
I don't, oh yeah, hold on.
I couldn't put it in there. But I can answer the evidence. So one of the things that we do, we really believe that the PLP, the actual site, is sort of a performance piece for students. So that's where we show growth over time, and we use it for the conference and for the formal assessments of those times. Not that we're necessarily assessing them. So what we do is we do a lot of blogging. Our students are consistently and constantly blogging in all of their classes about a variety of different things. And we have them reflect using prompts that we've created or just doing free reflections. And the students place their examples of evidence onto the blog, and then use labels to organize them. And so when they're looking for those pieces of evidence that show proficiency in a goal, then they can go back to their blog and find it using the labels. We found it to be very helpful because, you know, we're just having students kind of learning the reflection skill and the process, and so we model that in all of our classrooms. And we also have them, you know, they have the piece of evidence, but then they also have their reflection and having sort of some language around that and processing, and that's sort of what we use as an artifact for them for their PLP.
Okay, that sounds great. I just have one little technical issue right here. We have a question out there, I think from Monica McInerney, about what the today's meet is, where that link is. So I put that in the chat bar. If you open up the chat on the side, you'll see the link. But I also, I'm just going to screen share real quickly, and I'm going to screen share, and I'm just going to show folks out there that the today's meet is at PLP Pathways Webinar 2, all one word. That's todaysmeet.com, PLP Pathways Webinar 2. And if you still can't get there, just let us know, and we'll put that up in another way. So Kevin, you're using okay, something just popped up above your head. Oh, you have a link on there. Oh, that's
I'm sharing that profile copy that we use for those Hopes and Dreams conferences to start the goal setting process.
And how did you just do that? Sorry.
At the bottom right hand corner it says enter chat message or link here. Just click on the Google Drive icon and
oh God. All right. Now we're good. Okay. I'm still learning the technology. I saw that pop over your head. I was like, wow, that's cool. All right, so you guys you're setting goals, you're revising goals weekly. How do you deal with students who are maybe reluctant to set goals, or who say, well, I don't really have any goals? I mean, that comes up a lot in my conversations with people. What do you do with kids who maybe aren't invested in the...
Oop, I lost you, Don. Hello, hello. Lost you there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Don, just like disappear?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess we can keep talking. So what do you do if a student isn't...
Yeah, so reluctant students. So that absolutely happens, and we'll always have students who will say, oh, I don't have any goals, or I'm not good at these things. So we always obviously start with the strengths. So we talk to them about what their strengths are in these areas, and then those students who are really struggling to think about their goals, and we do these PLPs with 5th through 8th graders. So it's definitely, we see this a lot with our 5th and 6th grade. we give them a list of those different goals and the different transferable skill areas that we've used with students in the past, and we'll sit down with them and just have that conversation. Say, here's some examples that we've used in the past, and do any of these, look like something that you'd be interested in? We read over a couple with them, and then they say, oh yeah, I could work on using, different vocabulary in my writing, and then we talk about, okay, that's great. Now, and then we talk about what steps go into achieving those goals, and we keep the brainstorm alive that way.
One of the things that's actually a really good idea, to give them sample goals. We try and help the kids brainstorm what they're already doing. Like, what are you really into? Are there any clubs that you do? Like, if a student's in a Minecraft club, maybe they have a goal around persisting in Minecraft or something like that. And we also sometimes try and pair them with an adult. So if a student's really struggling, especially a student who might have a hard time finding relationships or feeling like they fit into the community, if there's an adult they can partner with for the goal, it helps them keep on track. And sometimes that can be a motivation, working on a project and trying to finish it with an adult. I actually had a student who wanted to, his goal was to create a skateboard, and he worked with our social worker, and they created skateboards, went to the skate park, and it was this whole big celebration for the student. And he was totally checked out at the start of it. So it ended up going really well.
Awesome.
So you've done your student-led conferences already?
So we started with our goal-setting conferences. We typically have 4 conferences a year. At the beginning of the year, we do our goal-setting and hopes and dreams conferences, and then our portfolio conferences will happen around the middle of November. So those are coming up in a few weeks.
Our social worker, and they created skateboards, went to the skate park, and it was this whole big celebration for the student. And he was totally checked out at the start. So it ended up going really well. So you've done your student-led conferences already?
So we started with our goal-setting conferences. We typically have 4 conferences a year. At the beginning of the year, we do our goal-setting and hopes and dreams conferences, and then our portfolio conferences will happen around the middle of November. So in a few weeks. All right. So yeah, our portfolio conferences are coming up, and at that point, the students will come in. One thing, Don actually came in to give a presentation at Wilson Central, and he said that for their portfolio conferences, they give the students a script ahead of time. We've never done that. We usually help them with the first conference, and by the second and third ones, they have it. And especially, we have the same students 5th through 8th grade, so by the time they're in 7th and 8th grade, it's second nature for them. But it is great because they come in, we open up their e-portfolios, and they take us through their 5 different goals and really talk to each piece of evidence. And as the students put in their evidence on a weekly basis, just to update their portfolio, we ask them to write little blurbs about, okay, how does this connect to that goal? So if you have a clear and effective communication goal around a writing piece, and you put in a writing document, we ask them to write down, all right, what's connected? Why would you put this piece of evidence in to begin with? And then from there we talk about, is this goal, is it practical? Is it working? Is it something that you're doing without needing to think about really? And then we open up the discussion to, do we need to change this? Do we need to tweak the language at all? Should we just take this goal out permanently and put in something new? So that's typically how our process goes.
Don, are you back?
Almost.
Oh, I can't hear him. What do you do if a goal isn't working?
So if a goal isn't working, first we go through and say, okay, why? We ask that why question. And if the student, it helps us to open up the conversation about, a big one that doesn't work often is we have students have an organization go around using their planner to help with time management. A lot of kids say, it works great when I write it down, but then I lose my planner.
Right.
So sometimes it's trying to force a square peg in a round hole, where eventually we're like, okay, let's try an online planner. And it's one of those, it's great to have that conversation because some kids are like, this just isn't working for me at all. So let's find an avenue where we're getting at the same goal and the same concept, but in a way that they can have success. So if a goal isn't working completely, we try to get to the bottom of why it's not. If it's worth pushing and pushing and pushing, we will keep that and maybe tweak what kind of steps we're going to go into achieving that goal. But if it's one of those things where it's like the kid says, I lose my planner every single day, maybe
right.
We take a couple of steps back and say, okay, let's start with something online. You can't lose it. It's cloud-based. Keep it there just to get in the process of writing down and staying organized.
Don, are you back? Do you guys involve parents if the goal isn't working out? Like, how do you communicate that to parents, and how are parents checking in on the progress of their students' goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So the parents have access to their e-portfolios. We have their students share their e-portfolios as soon as they make them. So their parents are collaborators. So they can access and view them whenever they'd like. The parents are part of our initial goal setting conference. So the parents come in. We keep it student centered as much as we can to hear their voice first, and then we let the parents give input about things they might like to see their son or daughter working on. And then as it goes on, as I said, the parents, we have a weekly Friday sheet sign off for our students where they bring the Friday sheets home, bring them back Monday. And one of the things that the parents have to sign off is that they looked at their e-portfolio and looked at their goals. So that's just our way of communicating with parents, knowing they are taking the time to look at these portfolios and they're, keeping a pulse on, are these goals working, and hopefully having some sort of conversation at home with their kids. Now, we're always open to conferences, so if something comes up or if parents like this isn't working or I'm worried about this, that's when we start having the parent-teacher conferences. Sometimes it's outside of that conference window that we typically like to have them in, but we stay as flexible as we can with that.
And that's a really nice thing, having the parents sign off on the Friday goals, because one of the components of Act 77 is parents, you need to show evidence of parents being a part of the goal setting process, and so that's really a nice way to show sort of the progression over time. We have
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Now we can.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, one of the things about Google Hangouts on air is that if you get off the call, it's hard to figure out how to get back onto the call because it's playing live while you're doing it. So I was listening, and I just want to thank you guys for keeping that going. I'm listening, and this conversation is really good, and I appreciate you guys doing that. And that's, I guess, just one question I had as a follow-up, because I was just listening, was how much time, Kevin, do you spend, how many students are you responsible for, and how do you manage your time checking all the goals? Because I heard you talking about having conferences sometimes outside of the conference time, and how do you manage checking all the goals?
Yeah, so typically in Swift House we have about 100 students and 4 core teachers, so each of us are responsible for about 25 of our core students, which is like our version of homeroom. As I said, we have that weekly Friday sheet where the students have to come to the teachers to get signed off to make sure they're caught up on all their work in their various academic areas. And one of our sign-offs for core, we have to check their goal reflections in order for them to get a signature from us. And that keeps us, so basically students know every Wednesday is we have a PLP block from 10:30 to 11, where it's just all the students do for that half hour is they do their goal reflections, they work on putting evidence in their PLPs, on their e-portfolios, and they just know that before Friday comes, at some point they have to show me, they have to physically take it up and show me that they did their goals. I can also access it. We use Site Maestro to send out the portfolio template for everybody, so we have access to all their e-portfolios on hand, and we can see when it's updated. Yes, for 25 students, that would take a very long time for me to sit through and click through everybody's different pages, which is why I put some onus on the students and say, if you want to get a signature from me, take the time, bring your Chromebook up. Luckily, we're one-to-one, so they always have this access, and show me, the work that you've been doing. Which, again, we're very lucky that we are one-to-one, so we have that ability to do that. But it's worked in the past too. And
I've heard other people are using that Site Maestro. And we have a couple, Life Lagueros is supposed to come on or join the call at a little after 4. And we're also, we wanted to talk about sort of the collecting evidence and reflecting on that today. So we have a couple other things to get to. But just real quick, it's always I like to swap technology. And Site Maestro, can you tell me how long you've been using that, what you think of it, and what it actually does?
Yeah, this is our second year using it. We began after we kicked off the e-portfolios last year. Basically, you set up a template that you want to use. So we set up ahead of time our e-portfolio template, which I can share. And once the template is set up, you put in your class roster with the first name, last name, and you name how you put in how you want it to be named. So mine would be Kevin Hunt PLP. So we put that in ahead of time with their email address. It basically blasts out the template to everybody, creates their own portfolio, which they have complete access to. So it gets it out, and then through Site Maestro, they have different functions. And again, it's only our second year using it. We don't go too deep into the different functions, but you can set it up where you can add bulk collaborators. So if you want to add somebody to either view or edit all the portfolios, you can put that right in the spreadsheet. If you want to add just a specific parent, you can go to that specific point in the spreadsheet to add for a student. If you want to see what's the last page to be updated, you can keep that information running. So it's nice. It's just a one-stop shopping. It's all in a spreadsheet, alphabetical order. And if a kid forgets what or can't find their site for whatever reason, we have it right there. We can pull it up, copy, paste it, send it out to them.
And is that free or is that a pay?
It's free.
Okay, and is that something? Sorry, go ahead, Maura.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you use Google Sites as your platform for the ePortfolio?
Yes, I can actually share this right now so you can see what our template looks like. Let me know if that pops up.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's our that's the main template that we use, and I have student examples and their permissions. If I could do a screen share with, just to show you like how students are putting in evidence. Don, it's very similar to your process that you shared with us a couple of days ago at our faculty meeting in terms of students putting in their evidence and reflecting about how does that relate back to their goals.
Can you actually do a screen share and show us that?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Are we on?
Okay.
Yep.
So basically, so this is our template. So the introduction is that who am I piece, principles and values. We actually took this idea from Don as well, just having students reflect on their various principles and values, and we're using Naviance as a platform district-wise, and we have to have our 7th graders complete surveys. So this is where we're housing that. Getting to our academic goals, we have our 3 transferable skills that are more geared academically under this piece, where students will go to these various pages and put in their evidence, and then the 2 other transferable skills goals are on citizenship and self-direction, which we took directly from the state. CVU is actually using the transferable skills as grad requirements now, which is why we tweaked our portfolio system away from the Vermont Vital Results and using specifically the transferable skills. Our goal reflections, this is what I was talking about earlier, we set it up as a blog post, so students will go on here and every week they'll click new post and put in their 5 goal areas and talk about what they're doing. So here's just a student example. So for his goal reflections, he puts in his 5 various goals as they have to do with communication, self-direction, so on and so forth, and then it'll show up as a running record. This one, he just jotted down some notes that he's going to go back through and kind of discuss how is theater an example of what he's doing for his communication goal. For his academic goals, so clear and effective communication, he writes his goal at the top, so that's the goal that we discussed and that he chose to work with. He provides a writing sample. Here's another writing sample of his 7-minute write. And then he just kind of gives a quick little blurb here about why this is a good piece of evidence and how it relates back. So as we go through, we try to get them to write more and more on those reflections. This is, we just got our e-portfolios off the ground about 3 weeks ago and really started having students put in their evidence the past couple weeks. So we're trying to get this. Like this shows about perseverance. Again, getting them linking back to why did I want this goal in the first place? So it's not just a goal that's there that they put away and they don't think about.
That looks pretty good. That's, I mean,
Sorry.
it's just awesome to see kids doing all this crazy work, I mean, it's just so different that, kids are just, when they buy into it, this is what I tell people, and I've talked to Maura about this too, is that when you get kids buying into it and able to personalize it, I think it really changes the dynamic. And I assume at some point we're going to have to start talking about how these practices are changing teaching practices, right? You know, how can you teach this way and see this going on and not want to transform your own practice to sort of promote these? That was great. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So the next sort of the next section, I'm going to go up here and see if Life is on the line. But you mentioned this a little bit, sort of, Kevin, the reflection on a weekly basis, and I know we've talked about it. But I guess more, what's your parameter, or what are your parameters for collecting evidence, and how do you kind of help kids understand what they need to be putting on their PLP, and what does that process look like?
So we really work with our students to show evidence of not only their goals, but growth towards proficiency within our classroom, to our learning targets. And so we also really reiterate with our students that the evidence doesn't have to be just writing. It can be a video, it can be them interviewing someone that they're working with, it can be them putting a piece of work into an app and annotating it using their language and highlighting pieces, talking to the app and uploading those. And that's one of the things that I really like about having everything be web-based, is that they're really able to store everything in their Google Drive and pull it over to the blog. And it is difficult for some students to sort of try using a non-text way to reflect, but we're trying to do constant short reflections in a variety of different ways, and really thinking about those multimodal literacies and how can we get students to show their learning and thinking in all different types of ways. And so it's been really helpful. And one of the things that we do, the teachers on our team, we set goals as well. And when we're getting ready for conferences and things like that, we will show students our own evidence and examples. And we try and set personal goals that also go along with things that students can relate to or are in common. And one of our teachers did a really great job of showing students how to collect evidence. One of her goals was that she would complete a Spartan race, and so she interviewed her CrossFit coach like once a month and would add that video, and so we would actually be tracking and looking at her her progress over time, and that was just a way that students could see it doesn't have to be just in school, it could be persevering in other ways, and so that was a really neat way to engage students.
Right. I mean, it's just when you talked about these short reflective reflections using video, I'm just trying to think what that would look like in my classroom, because even now when I go and I look at my kids' PLPs, it just seems that we still go back to text.
Mm-hmm.
We still always kind of rely on text, even though our kids are Instagramming and using all this social media. And I guess, I mean, again, this is a time for, I don't know if this is the right place for it, but when do we start using what kids are putting on social media as reflection tools? And that is going to start telling the kids that, hey, what I put out there, we're crossing these boundaries, because what they put out there digitally is also linked to their name. And using photographs, and I guess I don't know if kids see, if they go look at their Instagram feed, if they see that as growth or if they see that more as a journal. And I wonder how that's changing, or how kids are thinking about that. Even on Facebook, when you go back, they have that 2 years ago today you were doing this, do you want to reshare it? And so this idea of reflection is sort of coming up in different digital environments. And I wonder if kids are thinking about it that way, and should we be talking to them about that, and about that as a reflective tool? I mean, I don't know. It's just a thought that I have. So anyway, when we talk about the reflections, Kevin, you said you're having your kids do once a week. Do you ever have them do longer, more detailed reflections, and more at two? And how often does that happen? And how do you structure that? Is it a writing assignment, or what are you looking for when you're doing those longer reflections?
Yeah, so at the end of each trimester, we have our students complete a student a goal reflection essentially where they have to write about each of their goals. So you give one paragraph, it's an introduction about who they are, what an overarching statement about their goals, why they chose them, and they break down each piece. So they say, this is my communication goal. I chose this because a few pieces of evidence to show growth are, and they talk about those pieces of evidence, and then they go on and give the next steps. So we lay it out for them, we organize it, say, okay, Joe, what's your goal? Why'd you choose it? What's some evidence? Why is that evidence? What are your next steps? And we use some of that to gear and where our portfolio conferences go, because students will be honest in those reflections, and next steps will be like, get rid of this goal. This isn't working for me anymore, which is great for us to see. But it is, we've been talking about, how can we get away from just having it be text? What's some other ways we can engage and access, what their reflection is? Because, unless we're just grading them on the vehicle or assessing them on the writing piece itself, which obviously we will be, we're really looking at that reflection. We want them to be reflective.
So that's a great lead-in. Life Lagueros has joined us from the Tarrant Institute. Thanks for making it. We had a couple technical issues, but at least I did before. But Life's going to talk about that real reflection tool. And I just want everybody to also notice that Maura has posted a link to reflection prompts, which that's awesome. That's something I'm going to look at and maybe even use the students tomorrow if it's applicable. But Life, thanks for joining again. And I don't know if this is Kevin Hunt. He's from Williston Central School. You know Maura. And tell us about the real reflection.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So so the real reflection is something that I was turned on to by Susan Hennessy, extraordinaire. And I did write a blog post about it for Tarrant, and in that blog post I pulled out some things from the actual research article, the original research article that presents the real framework. So it came out of an action research project in Australia, multi-year thing. And it's interesting because you think about reflection, and there's I think there's two forms of reflection that we're really pushing in our schools. One is around kind of like big picture goals and things, like periodic reflection every month or so. And then there's the other day-to-day, which it sounds like just coming in right there at the end of what Kevin was talking about, where you guys were going with that. The minute-to-minute kind of in-the-moment reflection on your learning that really pushes your understanding and helps you construct your own knowledge, and is really important for learners. And there's a huge research base around that. But the research article, which I just put the link in the chat here, and it links into the article as well. But the interesting thing is that their whole project was actually came at everything from the standpoint of engagement, and that's where they ended up getting to reflection. And they talked about these two forms of engagement. One is just like, kids are just more engaged with what you're doing if you're involving them with reflection and giving them kind of a voice and a way to connect. But the other thing is this big E engagement, they call it, which is just like being engaged with school and just feeling like school is for me, is the way that they put it. So it's just interesting to see that that's the standpoint from which they came at it. The framework itself, I think I really like it because it just kind of organizes prompts in a way that allows teachers to be thoughtful about it. So if people have looked into the real framework there, the document I put up, they have these different kind of categories that they've used to organize a whole bunch of prompts, which, if any of us were creating prompts, we probably, if we were just brainstorming, we'd probably come up with a lot of these. But the difference here is that it looks like Susan's saying that they were hoping they could have links in Google+. So if somebody can put that link in there, that'd be great. in the Q&A section she mentioned.
Okay. Last time I tried something different, I got booted off. But Maura, you want to try and put a link on there?
Yep.
So, yeah, the other thing I could do is just maybe I could share.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, let me do that. I apologize. Beware my scary desktop. But here's what I was talking about before, which again, Susan Hennessy Extraordinaire had made a nice graphic of the big E, school is for me, and the small e about really being connected to the work at any given time. And here's the document that I put together, just pulling off the, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Pulling off the, right out of the research article, Munns and Woodward, 2006, and basically they organized a bunch of prompts under these different categories. And so they said, you know, one way to think about different types of reflection prompts is in terms of the depth of reflection or the depth of thinking that you're looking for from kids. And so they use a taxonomy called SOLO, and they go from unidimensional down to conceptual. Unidimensional is really just reporting out kind of what happened, and conceptual, of course, is where, you know, they're really making conceptual connections. And then they also talk about mode of engagement, which I really like, and they talk about emotional, intellectual, and behavioral modes of engagement, and the idea that really kids being engaged in a learning activity or with school in general, you want to have all three of these areas of engagement. And then they had this other thing, they're kind of the type of thinking that you're asking kids to do, and they talk about thinking about achievement, looking for evidence, collaborating with other people, overcoming barriers, or thinking about the task. And point being that then they organize these prompts along those lines. So they have a whole bunch of different prompts, and within each of these depth dimensions, they have them organized. So you ultimately get out of this 60 different prompts.
So can I break? I just have a quick question. If
Sure.
you were asking a kid to reflect, like on a blog entry,
Yep.
would you take one of those prompts, one of those questions, or are there a series of questions that you would ask them?
That's a great question. I mean, I've seen it done different ways. What I've advising teachers and what I've been hearing people have been having success with is to kind of, you know, first of all, give kids either a progression or an option of different questions to reflect on. And so, you know, this allows you to be thoughtful about what those options might be. So a teacher might say, I want to give an option in each of the three modes of engagement. I'm going to give them one emotional, one intellectual, and one behavioral question. Or some teachers might say, I'm going to give them options of what the depth. So I'm going to pull a question out of the unidimensional, multi, relational, and conceptual. Or they might say, I'm going to do super big conceptual questions. I want them to be something about how they felt about the work, but I'm going to ask them in different ways. It could be general feelings, could be specific, could be something about the people they worked with, it could be something about the task. So I think you could do it either way, Dawn, but this gives you just kind of a way to be systematic about it.
I can talk to that too. I first saw I can't get the link. I can't answer questions for some reason on the question and answer.
Okay.
I tried. Sorry. I was introduced to the Real Framework at the beginning of last school year, or maybe the end of the year before that. And so a lot of the reflection prompts that I posted on that document are prompts that I took or adjusted from the Real Framework. But what I found to be very successful is giving students like a menu of options of things that they could do. So when you're reflecting, you can do, and then giving them like 5 choices. Yeah. Because that's a way to differentiate it for your class, because not everyone's ready for the different tasks. And I talk a lot about finding just right tasks for you. So it's very similar to finding like a just right book, because everyone, you know, is ready for a different challenge. And so which of these questions is going to be a just right question for you, and helping support students in that way, because then it makes it really accessible for all of the students. So I found that to be really helpful.
Yeah, the one teacher I was talking to actually did something very similar, Maura, and her thought was also to want to give students choice around the modes of expression.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about doing something like I just mocked up a little table here where you would give them the choice of questions and then also be very deliberate about asking them, now choose which, way you're going to express your reflection. Are you going to record your voice? Are you going to give me some sort of diagram, maybe a interactive like a thing link? Are you going to make a little video? And you can you could actually tell kids, I don't want this to be in text this time. You could have kids kind of sign up, or for different ways for different questions. I mean, you could do it all sorts of different ways. But I think that that's a great point, Maura, that the more you can give kids just right ways to engage and ways to express, you're doing them a service, especially when it comes to reflection, which is all about making connections for themselves. I think that's all that the main parts I want to get out. There's a blog post on the Tarrant website, R is for Real Reflection, that has links to this framework, as well as other resources. So.
I just really appreciate your sharing that. That's a lot to think about, and too often I'm sitting there and just asking kids to write a blog entry without being thoughtful about it, and that gives me a new way of being way more thoughtful about it, and asking them about how. I saw one question there: how do you feel about your work? Which is really interesting. I don't ask kids that question, and I probably should be, but that's a really great resource, and I appreciate that very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so we're actually we're headed down the home stretch here. It's 20 past, and I guess what I just wanted to hear from folks is what's next for you guys? What are some of the big things that are going on with you, and where do you expect to be at our next call, which is actually on November 17th? And you guys have been great and really appreciate it. I'm actually learning a ton, and I hope everybody has a chance to come back on November 17th. But before that, what are the big, what's up next on your calendar, both PLPs and otherwise? Kevin, we'll start with you.
So on Swift House, our next big thing is just that big push to get students to have at least 4 to 5 pieces of evidence for each of their transferable skill goals, because their portfolio conferences are coming up. We need to make sure those are all set and the reflections are good to go, so they'll have something to talk about with their parents, and if we need to make adjustments, now's a great time to do it. And then school-wide, right now we're the only team, I think, using e-portfolios, so we're trying to, I'm part of the PLP committee that's in the school and district-wide as well. We're just trying to help out and make sure that everybody's getting all the steps that they need to meet the layout of Act 77 and meet all the required elements for this first go at it.
All right, sounds good. Life, what are you up to next?
Well, I'm working with all the middle grades students in Washington West SU, and so they're basically looking at conferences right after the next PLP Pathways webinar, so around the 21st of November. So at that point, people will hopefully feel like their students have, nice representations that they can share with parents. Hopefully they'll feel like they've talked things through. Many of these schools have been doing student-led conferences, so they're trying to really just think about how does the PLP make it different. And the answer usually is that this is a way that students can be really much more genuinely connected to the work, and so I think they're just trying to honor that, and they're just hoping that they don't kind of run out of time and have to get something together, that they can make sure that things that have been happening on the blogs, because all these schools are using blogs in the background thanks to you guys, your thinking at MGI last year. And so right now, people are really transferring that into Google Sites, and they just want to make sure that good stuff shows up in there and that the kids feel good about it. So hopefully I'll have a big smile on my face at the next Pathways webinar. But
yeah, right. Maura?
We just finalized our goals at our conferences on Friday, and so tomorrow is our first reflection on our goals so far, which is one of my favorite times to see the students, you know, oh yeah, that was what I set my goal about. And so we do a protocol where students make bumper stickers and they put them on their iPads, so every time that they go anywhere, the goals are right in front of them, and the teachers have their own goals on their laptops, and so it sort of becomes a part of our team culture, which is really exciting. And we're just going to be doing a lot of reflecting, and the hope is that we can really think about our schedule and find times where we really can allow time for independent learning within the day based on the students' goals.
All right, that sounds great. Here at Main Street Middle School, we have our parent conferences are next Thursday and Friday. So it has been a really big push to get, right now our kids are leaving that identity phase and they're going into the growth and reflection, so they're sort of bridging that, and the way they bridge that is through the setting of goals. Our kids have been really good about setting the goals this year. We changed it a little bit so that we have one academic, one transferable skill goal, one extracurricular, and then a sustainability goal. That's part of the green team, which is integrated into our team. It has taken up a lot of time this year, and part of that I attribute to the fact that our kids did not come to us with a common level of tech skill, and so we've had to spend more time than usual sort of getting kids up to speed. But hopefully by the end of next week, we're going to have our kids will have their goals set up, they'll have a few pieces of evidence, and then we can kind of just go right into that growth and reflection and really start curating and collecting evidence. I put a link up there, which is actually one of the things that we've done. I wrote a blog post about being very thoughtful about your communications to parents, and I tried to lay out an information stream for them, which started at open house, where we introduced the idea of PLPs, and then we've also sent something home with them with the conference sign-ups, where we wanted them to look at a script, and we gave them some, I shared this with Life, but we gave them some overviews of what a PLP is and how we're using it. And today, this document that I just shared with you is actually a script that we're now practicing with the kids. So we have the kids pair up, and they're going through the script as if they were presenting their PLP to their parent. And we're really working hard with them so that they can explain what the personal learning framework is, they can explain what the transferable skills are, and that when they show up, I told them today, you need to show up like you're prepared. I mean, you're going to be with your parents and your teachers. It's going to be a stressful situation sometimes. You need to, get ready for it. And so we're practicing with them, and then we're actually evaluating each other on our speaking and listening skills. Just kind of going through that process. And then on top of that, I'm also, Kevin, like you, Team Summit is about 2 years ahead of the other teams at the school in terms of the PLP formation and integration. So what I'm doing is I'm leading some professional development on that, and just trying to get everybody up to speed, which it can be equal parts rewarding, and it can also be, a little frustrating, but we're getting that rolling, which is great. And what's also happening today, we had 6 of our students visit other classes, 6th grade classes, and actually teach kids how to set up their PLP template. And I think that's my favorite part, is when you can just send, okay, I'm sending kids over, and you're a little scared, but it turns out the kids do a great job, and that's my favorite part, is watching other kids kind of teach, because they really demonstrate mastery in that way. So things are busy. Everybody's busy, and as Maura told me yesterday, it's because of our circadian rhythms are getting disrupted, because the days are getting shorter. It's been a full moon.
It's crazy.
And this is why October is the
worst.
It's a tough month. But I really want to thank you guys for joining the call. I really appreciate everybody's input. This is fantastic for me. It really keeps me focused. It gives me some great ideas. And just really appreciate everybody tuning in. And hopefully we'll see you again on November 17th. And I'd also like to thank the Middle Grades Collaborative for sponsoring this project. Anybody have any last words?
Thanks so much. You guys are doing great work. Nice to meet you virtually, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks so much for showing up. You really added to it, kept it going with Maura. Maura, Unbelievable. Thank you very much for staying calm. And I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch. Thanks very much.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye now. Take care.